When I first moved into Brookpine Estates, I didn't expect trouble. Nestled on the edge of the state park, with lush tree lines and quiet cul-de-sacs, the neighborhood had the kind of charm I thought only existed in magazines. I bought the last house on the loop, a brick and stone ranch with a wraparound porch and a backyard big enough for a game of fetch or two. That was important, because it wasn't just me moving in. It was me. And Max. Max was more than a dog. He was a brother, a partner, a survivor, a decorated German Shepherd K9 who'd saved more lives than most people in the HOA boardroom could imagine. We served together in 2 deployments overseas. While others saw just a big dog with a scar across his snout and cloudy eyes from an old explosion, I saw the soul of a soldier. He was 12 now, aging and limping slightly, but his loyalty was undiminished. I didn't ask for much. After years of deployments and government housing, I wanted peace. A place to write, to garden, to sit on the porch and sip black coffee while Max napped at my feet. I didn't care about pristine hedges or whether someone's mailbox matched the HOA's color scheme. I just wanted a home. But Brookpine had other plans. It started small. A letter tucked into my mailbox, printed on crisp white paper with a red HOA seal embossed at the top. It read, "Dear homeowner, you are currently in violation of Brookpine HOA regulations, Section 14.2, Pet Policy. Our policy permits no more than 1 domestic animal per household under 40 pounds. Failure to comply may result in fines and/or legal action. Sincerely, Brookpine HOA Compliance Committee." I read it twice, then laughed. Max weighed 80 pounds. He was pure muscle and old war wounds. The letter had no room for exemptions or understanding. I shrugged it off. Surely, I thought, once they knew the situation, it would all be fine. But it wasn't. The next week, I got another letter. This time, it came with a $250 fine. Then came the visits. It was a Thursday morning when I first met Karen Wexler, the HOA president. She marched up my walkway in beige slacks, high heels sinking into the grass, clipboard clutched like a weapon. Her eyes scanned everything with precision. The length of my grass, the wind chimes, even the old wooden flagpole I'd bolted into the porch. And then she saw Max. He was lying beside my rocker, head resting on his paws, tail thumping lazily as I scratched behind his ears. "Oh, that's the dog," she said, as if he were a rat she'd spotted in a restaurant. "That's Max," I said. "Retired K9, served in Afghanistan, Iraq, and the Department of Homeland Security." She didn't blink. "He's over the weight limit." "I figured someone would mention that," I said calmly. "That policy's for domestic animals. Max is registered as a federal working dog. He's protected under multiple state and federal statutes." Karen's lips pursed. "Well, our HOA rules are quite clear. You'll need to rehome him or face escalating fines. This neighborhood has standards." I stood. Slowly. Max stood too, out of instinct. Even in retirement, his protective reflexes hadn't dulled. Karen took a step back. "Your neighborhood standards," I said, "don't override federal law, and they sure as hell don't override mine." The following weeks were a nightmare. Fines doubled, then tripled. I received citations for made-up infractions. Unapproved flagpole height, unlicensed porch wind chimes, even unauthorized canine behavior when Max barked at a squirrel. They put a lien on my house, claimed I was a public nuisance. Max didn't understand any of it. He just lay at my feet, tail wagging, still sleeping with his head on the boots I wore in the sandbox. His world was simple: loyalty, love, and protection. Mine was turning into war. The final straw came in the form of a cease and desist order. They claimed they had the right to remove and rehome any pet found in violation of HOA guidelines. They gave me 5 days to comply. I called an attorney. She laughed when I read her the notice. "They can't touch him," she said, "but if they try, you call me, and the sheriff, and your congressman." Still, the stress weighed on me. I didn't want a battle, but if they wanted one, I'd give them the kind they'd never forget. Day 5. I came home from the grocery store to find the backyard gate broken open. Max was gone. There was no note, no tracks, just his water bowl tipped over, a broken leash hanging from the tree where I tied it when I worked in the garden. My hands trembled. My chest tightened. I called animal control. Nothing. Called the police. They said it was a civil matter. Talk to your HOA. I called Karen. She didn't answer. I pounded on her door. Her husband, a meek accountant type, answered with a stammer. "She's not home," he said, eyes darting. But I saw it, just behind him, in the kitchen window. A kennel. Max's collar on the counter. I stared at that empty backyard for hours. The echoes of Max's bark haunted the silence like a ghost. The little signs, the snapped branch, the broken gate were all too clean. Someone had opened that gate, lured him out, maybe even taken him with a treat or a false tone of kindness. Whoever it was hadn't just taken a pet. They'd taken the last living piece of a decade I spent watching brothers fall and cities burn, holding tight to the one constant that always brought me back to life. Max. And now he was gone. But I wasn't broken. I was awake. I made my first call to Victor Ramirez, a former Army investigator turned private consultant. He picked up on the first ring. "You serious?" he said. "They took Max?" I didn't have to say more. Within hours, Victor drove in from 2 states over, his black SUV rolling up like a war chariot. He had surveillance drones, cameras, legal printouts, and contacts who owed him favors. One of them was an off-duty sheriff deputy named Granger, who stopped by that night under the pretense of checking a noise complaint. "Yeah, I saw something weird on Karen Wexler's property yesterday," Granger said, eyes scanning the HOA president's house through binoculars. "Looked like a large dog being kept in a garage kennel. You say Max has microchips and federal tags?" "Triple registered," I said. "Military ID, VAK-9 registry, and state vet microchip. If they scanned him, they knew immediately he wasn't just any dog. That makes this felony theft of government property," Victor said with a grim smile. "And if they mistreat him, that's animal cruelty stacked on federal violations." I felt rage boil under my skin. It wasn't just about rules now, it was about justice. And they'd just handed me all the ammunition I needed. The next morning, I filed an official stolen property report with the county sheriff's office. They didn't shrug it off this time. Granger made sure of that. Victor, meanwhile, pulled every HOA file he could find. Karen had a history. Old citations, dubious spending from HOA accounts, even a small claims court case where she tried to sue a neighbor for having too patriotic a flag. She lost. Bitterly. "She thrives on control," Victor said, flipping through digital records on his tablet. The moment she saw Max, she decided he didn't fit her image of the neighborhood. "She stole him for her own ego," I muttered. "That's going to be her downfall." We launched a coordinated plan. Step 1. Proof of life. Victor flew a drone over Karen's backyard late at night. It hovered in silence, zooming through thermal lenses. In the corner of her backyard shed was a faint heat signature. Victor tapped the screen. There, that's canine movement. I leaned in and my heart twisted. Maximum. Sleeping, caged. Step 2. Media pressure. I contacted Wounded Paws, a national nonprofit that specialized in supporting retired service animals. I sent them Max's military record, photos, medals, his commendation from the U.S. Army for saving 3 soldiers during a raid. Within 12 hours, they posted a story on social media. Veterans decorated K9 stolen by HOA. Justice needed for Max the hero dog. The story exploded. Local news picked it up. Then regional. Within a day, hashtags like #Justice for Max and #Free the War Dog trended on Twitter. Angry commenters flooded Brookpine's HOA website with reviews. People began driving by the neighborhood, leaving dog treats and signs at the entrance. Karen was under siege. She responded with an emergency HOA meeting, but I had already been a step ahead. I showed up with my lawyer. "Before we begin," she said, voice tight with disdain, "we'll ask that Mr. Daniels and his guests kindly remove themselves from private HOA matters." My attorney, Grace Lynn, smiled politely. "Actually, Karen, as a homeowner, my client has every right to attend, especially since you're holding his federally registered service dog in violation of multiple laws. Unless, of course, you'd prefer to discuss it in front of a judge." Karen paled. Someone from the board whispered, "She really took the dog?" Grace turned on the screen behind her. She displayed a video. Max lying on a cold slab in the shed, a timestamp and thermal tag flashing in the corner. Dead silence. Karen tried to speak, but the words caught in her throat. "I'd like to resolve this civilly," Grace said, "but if necessary, we'll pursue felony charges, including conspiracy, HOA misconduct, and trespassing." Victor added, "Oh, and if Max has so much as a flea on him, you'll be facing animal cruelty charges too." Karen cracked. "He was a violation," she shouted. "He doesn't belong here. He's too big, too aggressive, too military." "That military dog saved American lives," I snapped. "While you were busy measuring mailbox heights, he was dragging wounded soldiers out of burning Humvees." Karen's voice faltered. The board was silent. She looked at them. None came to her defense. I stood, collected my file, and stared her down. "You have 24 hours to return him, or we come with a warrant." The next morning I heard it. The click of claws on the porch, the soft huff of a familiar breath. I opened the door, and there he was. Maximum. Thin, dirty, but alive. He limped up and leaned against me, head pressing into my chest. I fell to my knees and held him. In his collar was a note, "Returned per HOA decision. All fines dismissed. No further contact. Brookpine Compliance Committee." Cowards. But it didn't matter. They gave him back. And now, I was going to make sure this never happened again. Not to me. Not to any veteran. Not to any dog. Ridgeway Pines had always projected the illusion of harmony. Perfect hedges, identical driveways, smiling neighbors who all seemed to sip the same flavor of bland contentment. But under the surface, the place was rotting. Jack had peeled back the veneer, and what lay beneath was a 3-headed monster of control, corruption, and cowardice. He called it the HOA Hydra. Each head of the beast played its role. Marcia Benedict, the queen. Randall Cooper, treasurer and silent manipulator. And Lisa Green, secretary, gossip courier, and self-appointed moral judge of the neighborhood. Each worked in unison to maintain the facade of order and crush anything that threatened it. But like any hydra, if you cut off one head without a plan, two more would grow in its place. So Jack didn't go in swinging. He went in surgically. The first strike landed at the Ridgeway Pines Town Hall, a building most residents hadn't set foot in since they'd closed on their homes. Jack, flanked by 6 other residents, Tom and Becky Langford, retired engineer Harold Faulkner, single mom Dana Wells, and the quiet but clever Trujillo twins, took the microphone during the monthly public comment session. He didn't shout. He didn't rant. He presented. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jack began, sliding color-coded folders to the town clerk. "Inside these documents, you'll find evidence of financial impropriety, HOA mismanagement, and possible fraud involving a no-bid contractor who happens to be a relative of the HOA president. All of this was paid using mandatory dues collected from over 120 families, without transparency, without consent, and without oversight." Gasps filled the room. Some murmured, others stiffened. Then Jack added the finishing blow. "We are requesting a full municipal audit of the Ridgeway Pines HOA, as per our rights under the Fair Homeowners Act of 2019, and we're willing to retain legal counsel if ignored." The city council took the folders. A staffer began scribbling down notes. And as the camera from the public broadcast feed zoomed in, Marcia, who sat tight-lipped in the third row, finally looked rattled. She hadn't seen this coming. She had underestimated the man who didn't decorate for Christmas and didn't attend potlucks. She thought Jack was just angry. She didn't know he was a trained strategist. The fallout was swift. Within a week, the city had scheduled an independent auditor to begin reviewing Ridgeway Pines HOA's finances. Suddenly, Marcia's cheery monthly newsletters stopped arriving. The HOA website went down for maintenance, and a mysterious email was sent to all residents claiming technical difficulties had delayed board updates. But Jack wasn't done. He knew how to disrupt a system from within. So he turned to the bylaws once again, this time to exploit a clause buried near the end of the governing document. A petition signed by 60% of homeowners may initiate a special vote to recall one or more HOA board members to be conducted within 30 days of verification. That clause became the rebellion's new mission. Jack printed the forms. Donna Wells built a spreadsheet. The Trujillo twins mapped each house and tracked contact. And by the end of 2 weekends, just 2, they had signatures from over 80 households. Marcia tried everything to stop them. She called the signatures invalid. She claimed residents were pressured. She accused Jack of defamation and even tried to get a restraining order. It failed because Jack hadn't broken a single law, not one. He was following their rules, just better than they ever had. But the Hydra wasn't done fighting. Randall Cooper, usually the silent shadow in Marcia's plans, began leaking misinformation. He sent emails warning residents that tax increases and outsider interference would destroy property values if the HOA lost control. Lisa Green spread rumors that Jack had a criminal past, that he'd been fired from the government, that he was dangerous. It might have worked in another neighborhood, but Ridgeway Pines wasn't the same place anymore. The rebellion had just when I thought the storm had passed, the calm turned ominous. Karen Wexler wasn't done. A week after the HOA board's collapse and the new transitional committee's reforms, an envelope showed up in my mailbox. No return address. Inside was a thick packet of legal threats, accusations, and vague warnings about defamation, harassment, and unlawful surveillance. But it wasn't just legal paper. There was a photo. Max, apparently taken from a neighbor's motion-activated camera, digging through the trash behind my house. It was grainy and old, but Karen's voice echoed in my head. "He's aggressive. He's a threat." The message was clear. She was trying to turn the community against us. I called Grace immediately. "We expected retaliation," she said grimly, scanning the papers. "Karen's throwing everything she's got to drag you into a lawsuit war." Victor suggested another plan. "If Karen wants to play dirty, we'll fight dirty. We'll gather evidence of harassment, intimidation, and any attempts to sabotage Max's recovery. We'll flip the script and expose every move she makes." Over the next 2 weeks, strange things happened. Tires slashed on my truck. Anonymous calls threatening to take Max away for good. Flyers dropped on neighbors' doors, spreading false rumors about me. But every time, Victor and Grace were ready. We documented everything meticulously. Cameras, audio recorders, eyewitness statements, nothing was missed. The community, instead of turning against us, rallied. Neighbors came forward, offering their own stories of Karen's intimidation tactics. A young family told us how Karen had harassed their children for playing too loud. An elderly couple recounted a visit from HOA inspectors who demanded exorbitant fees for fake violations. Karen's reign of terror was exposed in full. Then came the final blow. Grace filed a countersuit for harassment and defamation. The court froze Karen's assets and banned her from contacting anyone in the community. Her social media accounts were flooded with reports and eventually suspended. Local news ran exposés on her abuses of power and corrupt HOA management. Max, sensing the change, grew stronger every day. One morning, as I poured coffee, Max barked sharply. Outside the window stood a small group of neighbors, smiling, waving, holding signs that read, "Max is our hero. No more Karen. Justice for veterans and pets." Karen's last attempt at revenge crumbled like a house of cards. And as I looked at Max, scarred but unbroken, I realized this wasn't just a fight about a dog or HOA rules. It was about standing up to bullies, fighting for what's right, and proving that no one messes with a veteran's family. The courtroom was packed. Supporters filled every seat: veterans, neighbors, animal rights advocates, and reporters. The air buzzed with anticipation. This wasn't just a civil case anymore. It was a symbol of community standing up against injustice. Grace laid out the case clearly and methodically. Evidence of HOA misconduct, Karen's illegal actions, harassment campaigns, and the emotional trauma Max and I suffered. The judge nodded gravely. After hours of testimonies, the verdict came down like a thunderclap. Karen Wexler was found guilty of multiple charges: theft of federal property, fraudulent HOA governance, harassment and defamation, animal cruelty and neglect. She was fined heavily, barred from holding any HOA or community leadership roles, and ordered to pay restitution to affected homeowners. The new HOA committee worked quickly to restore trust and peace in the neighborhood. They launched community programs, including a special fund for veterans with service animals, free pet vaccinations, and neighborhood safety initiatives. Max became a local legend, featured on news segments, honored at the county fair, and even invited to a ceremony at the Veterans Hall where he received a special medal. For me, the victory was more than legal. It was personal. I stood on my porch, watching Max chase butterflies across the lawn, tail wagging like the battle was over and peace was here to stay. Neighbors waved as they passed by. Kids played freely. And the constant drone of HOA politics was replaced by laughter and the soft hum of life. I learned that sometimes standing up means walking into the storm with your dog at your side. That justice isn't just a word, it's a fight. And that heroes come in many forms, even four-legged ones. The dust had settled, but the scars remained. For Max, it was more than physical. He carried the memories of captivity and fear. For me, the battle left a mark on my trust in the community we called home. So we decided to heal, not just ourselves, but the neighborhood. I organized a community gathering, a picnic on the green with food, music, and games. The invitation went to everyone, longtime residents, newcomers, even those who'd been caught in the crossfire during Karen's reign. People showed up hesitantly at first, but as the afternoon sun warmed the park, walls came down. Stories were shared about lost pets, struggles with HOA rules, and dreams for a kinder, fairer neighborhood. Grace spoke to the crowd, reminding everyone that governance is about service, not power. Victor helped set up a neighborhood watch program, ensuring safety without overreach. I gave Max a new collar, engraved with the words, "Brookpine Estates Guardian." Neighbors clapped, some teared up. Max wagged his tail proudly, the symbol of resilience and unity. Over the next months, the neighborhood transformed. HOA meetings became open forums, inviting input and transparency. Children's laughter replaced the tension that once gripped the streets. Even Karen's former allies stepped back, choosing peace over conflict. On quiet evenings, I'd sit on the porch with Max and watch the stars. The battle for justice had been won, but the true victory was the renewed trust and hope in our community. And I knew that no matter what came next, we were stronger, together. Years passed since the war against the HOA tyranny ended. Max, now older but still dignified, remained a symbol of courage and resilience. The neighborhood had grown, not just in houses, but in heart. Brookpine Estates became a model community. The reforms we fought for turned into traditions. Annual Heroes Day, celebrating veterans and their service animals. An open HOA board, elected fairly and held accountable. Pet-friendly policies that respected the bond between humans and their companions. But the real legacy was deeper. Neighbors who once distrusted each other now came together to support new families. Children learned the story of Max, the dog who saved lives overseas and brought a community back from the brink. One afternoon, as I walked Max through the streets, a young boy ran up, holding a drawing of a dog wearing a medal. "Is this Max?" he asked. I nodded. "Wow," the boy said. "He's a real hero, just like my dad." I smiled, knowing that Max's story had become more than ours. It was a lesson in courage, justice, and the power of standing up for what's right, even when the odds are stacked against you. As the sun set behind the trees, Max sat beside me, head resting on my knee. Together, we watched the neighborhood we'd fought so hard to protect. A community forever changed by one dog's unwavering spirit.